They were just supposed to take samples and leave. Everyone on the mission knew how dangerous this planet was, but they thought they'd timed their expedition well enough to avoid the greatest threat it posed. The weather had other plans. The Evrith were an aquatic species that lived in the depths of their ocean world, so when they left the water and ventured to other worlds, they always had to wear a pressure suit filled with water, which was supplied oxygen from a tank on their back by way of a pump. At the same time, the carbon dioxide they release is filtered out and vented into the atmosphere outside of the suit. If the pump were to fail, the Evrith would suffocate, and if the integrity of the suit was compromised, the change in pressure would have explosive consequences. This being the case, the suits were especially sturdy and resistant to damage by design. This, combined with the fact that they were functionally interchangeable with spacesuits for their species, allowed the aliens the ability to explore harsh or airless environments for limited periods, with enough caution and planning. DN-20 was one of over 30 moons orbiting a gas giant, DN-1, within the Evrith's home system, and it was toxic in every sense of the word. The various flora and sparse fauna had all adapted to be highly acidic or basic in response to their environment, just so they could survive. Plants produced strong bases, so they could neutralize the acids in the water they took in through their roots, while the animals, which were mostly herbivores but highly aggressive, developed even stronger acids in their digestive tract to counter the bases of the plants. As far as could be surmised, there was not and has never been a sentient species to exist on this moon, which left them with nothing but conjecture about what type of magic they would have developed if they had. Of course, the air itself wasn't safe to breathe either, with it taking only several breaths to begin dissolving the tissues of all parts of the respiratory system of any non-native species. And that wasn't even mentioning what damage would be done to exposed flesh. Although the process would be slower in the case of species with thicker skin, it would still only take roughly a minute for the outer layer of skin to be eaten through, exposing the underlying dermis. But while it terrified the Evrith, it was also an amazing opportunity to study and research the first world of its kind. There were tales from the homeworld of the blessed humans, of regions where life thrived in the most inhospitable of environments, but even then those were specific regions and circumstances, while this was an entire world. A whole planetary ecosystem where survival was based on being just as toxic, or even more so than whatever you were competing with for food, or even the food itself. And so they prepared. They paid careful attention to weather patterns, sent probes and rovers to send back data for them to analyze, and compiled everything to lay out the best possible time, place, and conditions for a landing party to touch down on the surface. They increased the density and durability of the outer layers of their suits so they could endure for longer, before having to leave and put thick metal plates on the bottoms of their boots to stop the ground, or anything on it, from eating through them from below. After that, it was just a matter of location and time. Finally, they found what appeared to be a gap of roughly 4 hours, where there was no projected inclement weather, namely acid rain that could eat through their suits in a matter of minutes, even with the new improvements. The location was a small valley directly next to a large rock formation, and seemed to contain relatively few animals. This was ideal since collecting samples from the environment and native flora would be an easier task with minimal interference from territory wildlife. An away team of 5 were selected and sent down with vials and containers designed to withstand the toxicity of the items they would have to hold, along with trackers, so the main ship could pinpoint their positions from orbit and intervene if it proved necessary. And with that, a shuttle was launched and the crew set out on this grand new adventure. Unfortunately, things did not go to plan. Landing the shuttle under the shade of a natural orchard of trees bearing identifiable fruit, they moved in a group, not wanting to venture too far from each other on a world as dangerous as this one. Otherwise, everything was proceeding as expected. The integrity of the suits was holding up well, and their boots only showed hints of damage and only to the treated metal soles, which came in direct contact with the ground as they walked. When one of them would collect a sample, the other 4 would keep watch so the collector could completely focus on the task at hand before moving on once more. They continued like this for about an hour and a half, before an urgent call came from the ship in orbit. Emergency. The weather has changed unexpectedly. There is a massive rainstorm making its way towards the valley. We don't believe you have time to make it back to the shuttle. Stay put, while we come to collect you and the samples. Repeat, stay where you are. We are homing in on your signals as we speak. The team felt a rush of panic, and carbon dioxide began venting out of their suits at an accelerated rate as they experienced their species' version of hyperventilation, but calmed themselves and each other with the knowledge that the ship was on its way. So they waited, and waited. By now they could see the storm clouds, and a sense of dread started to creep in. Another call came in on the communicator. "Where are you? We are at the location of your signals. Can you see us?" The concern in the voice of the ship's captain, and the fact that there was no ship in sight, confirmed a nagging what-if scenario that had started playing in the minds of the away team after they felt too long had passed while waiting. Something was interfering with the signals, an environmental or atmospheric variable they had not accounted for. Perhaps it was even the same variable that had caused a sudden shift in the weather. Whatever the case, the ship couldn't find them, and they couldn't afford to wait any longer. "We are going to attempt to find shelter and ride out the storm. Something is interfering with our tracking signals, and we don't know if we'll be able to maintain communication during the storm. The shuttle is somewhat sheltered and should make it through without too much damage. If the storm passes and we can't re-establish contact, meet us by the shuttle. Team leader Argov out." Following the leader, the group broke out into an awkward sprint, moving as quickly as the suits and water contained within would allow, or frantically searching for anywhere to take shelter. Fortunately, they had been steadily moving in the direction of the rock formations to their north from the beginning, and as the first drops began to hit the ground, they came into sight. Being from a water world, all 5 of them were wind mages, and initially they thought creating a shield of air around them would give them more time to search for a crevice or cave to enter, but they quickly found that the mana of this world was just as toxic as the air, and if they hadn't stopped using magic as quickly as they did, the mana poisoning could have been fatal. Regardless, by the time they did find a small cave that barely managed to hold the group, none of them were in good shape. It hadn't been just a rainstorm, but a downpour, and their suits had suffered terribly, their integrity on the brink of compromise. Now they were weakened and vulnerable on all fronts, and it was all they could do to stay conscious and hope this cave wasn't the home of a creature who simply hadn't returned home yet. Of course, it was. Because when it rains, it pours. They huddled together for over 3 hours, with the storm showing no signs of ending, and no further messages from the ship, but at least they were safe. Then the cave's owner came home. It was a giant boar that rivaled them in height, and easily tripled the meat in weight. Covered in extremely thick fur, probably to prevent acidic rain such as this from making direct contact with its skin, it huffed and grunted at discovering the intruders. The Yvrith were powerless to resist, and all but accepted their fates, when they noticed what looked like a plume of steam rising up behind the boar, followed by a giant figure that reached down and wrapped long arms around the belly of the beast and lifted. Hoisting the scurrying pig off his feet, the figure followed through with the motion, arching their back as they suplexed the animal, slamming it snout first into the ground. It was a fully naked and hairless humanoid that stood at least twice as tall as their own 3-foot forms, and the steam rising from their body was none other than the result of a chemical reaction as the acidic rain landed on their skin, burning and eating away at it endlessly, but for some reason unable to make any progress. The figure let out a fearsome roar from the depths of its throat, and a giant burst of steam poured out between curled lips and bared teeth. The stunned boar got to his feet and made a groggy charge, only to run directly into a punch that smashed in his already injured nose, blood gushing out of his nostrils. Already wary of this single opponent, the boar chose to retreat when another 3 steaming outlines came into view. "Guessing you're the Yvrith away team. Let's get you all patched up." The voice that came from the figure, clearly a female now that they were close enough to see properly, crouched at the cave's entrance, was hoarse and raspy, more thick steam flowing out of her mouth as she spoke. Clearly the toxic air was wreaking havoc on their lungs, but she seemed to simply be powering through it. The Yvrith had a strong suspicion as to the species of the woman, but it was confirmed as soon as she reached out a hand, and a feeling of powerful rejuvenation surged through them. Healing magic. She was a blessed. A human. Not only were they healers, but they were essentially self-sustaining mana reactors. She wouldn't be affected by the toxic mana in the air like they had. "Phil, get your ass over here. We got some mana poisoning." The female called one of her companions over. Not another steaming figure, but a clothed, damp one. "Phil here's a unique blessed. His specialty is purification, so he gets to take a stroll in the rain while we get to sizzle like steaks in the grill, and have to grow all our hair out again. Cleaning out your manners not going to be a problem. Oh, I'm Jax, by the way. That's Stevie, Mark, and Betty." As Philip took Jax's place in front of the group, and removed the impurities of their manner, Jax took the time to introduce the rest of her group. Argov looked at Philip's outfit and didn't recognize it as a uniform, and couldn't help but ask about their saviors. "I am Argov, the team leader. Are you an early response team? Did our people request your help? Huh? Oh, no, nothing like that. We were on our way back from a party on... Fuck, why can't they give planets proper names anymore? Stevie, what planet was it? CRT5. That's the one. Anyway, we were heading back to the jump gate in the next system and decided to cut through here as a shortcut. That's when we picked up a distress signal from your ship in orbit, so we pulled over to see if we could help. Your captain said they still couldn't get a lock on your signals, but they knew you'd headed north for your landing point, so we just parked next to your shuttle and started walking. We figured you'd head for the rock since there's nothing else out here ready to take cover by, and what you know, here you are. And our captain asked you to come find us? Asked? Shit, man, we volunteered. But enough about us, let's get you guys safe and sound. Alright, fellas and gal. Grab a buddy, keep him covered. Run like that time Principal Gibbons found out we were the ones who let a kangaroo loose in his house. Jax picked up Argoff and cradled him like a small child against her chest, with the others doing the same for the rest of his team, before taking off in full sprints through the burning rain. Argoff and the others curled in against their human, afraid of the rain and fearing that their suits would finally fail. But Jax glanced down at him and gave him a comforting smile. Don't worry, we've got you. They each kept their torsos hunched over to protect the Arif in their care. Philip's purification range wasn't all that large, but he ran in the centre of the group to at least lessen the acidity in the raindrops that fell around him. Whether it was from the mental or physical exhaustion of the day's events, the confidence in Jax's voice finally let Argoff and the others feel some semblance of safety, and they drifted off to sleep in their arms. After almost 2 straight hours of running, the humans finally made it back to the Arif shuttle, and gently woke up the aliens once inside, allowing them to swap out the damaged suits for fresh ones, and re-establish contact with the main ship. They thanked the humans profusely, promising that if they ever needed anything from them in the future, they'd gladly help. That's really sweet, but no need to go to any trouble. We were just in the right place at the right time. Now, if you want to buy us around a drink sometime, then you've got a deal. But for right now, as much as I love being buck-ass naked in the front of complete strangers, I think I'm going to head back to our ship and slip into a fresh pair of anything I can find. See you around, Argoff. The humans all excused themselves and exited the shuttle, Jax letting out a string of curses as she looked up into the downpour, as if she'd somehow forgotten the rain was acidic, which she had. Argoff and his team let out a round of exhausted laughter, before settling the shuttle's autopilot to return to the main ship, and slowly falling asleep once more in their chairs, thinking about the humans who had saved them. Not because it was their job or obligation, not even because they'd been asked, because they hadn't. They didn't know anything about them and hadn't even expected or asked for a reward for their efforts, except for a round of drinks. A minuscule price to pay for the lives of 5 sentient beings. They just helped because they could. Because someone was in trouble, and they were in a position to do something about it. How very human.